I wonder if people ever wonder about you or me, and think, or even ourselves. Who is the real me? Who's the real me? The reason I ask that is because don't we come across differently, or don't other people come across differently to us at different times and different circumstances? We all do it. You can act one way with some people, and you have to act another way with another people, because you wouldn't think of acting the same way. Like, you go up to a person that you might know very well, and you might be kidding or teasing, or maybe even a little sarcastic with them. But you know that there's another group of people that you would never dream of doing that with. You might be earnest or plain-spoken or gentle to some. You might be kind and docile and restrained, but other times you might be a little louder or more freewheeling or more boisterous. But these are just surface personality traits, right? And we all do that. We all know how we can tame or, jack up a little bit about who we are, depending on the circumstance. But what about other things that make us who we are? For example, am I the patient and understanding person, or am I the guy that's yelling at the person in traffic who cuts me off? Am I the person who is accepting of someone who makes a mistake that impacts on me, or do I continually vent my anger every time somebody does something wrong and then have to apologize later? Am I a person who rarely gets offended, or somebody who feels hurt at every perceived slight? Am I the person who goes the extra mile, or am I the one who tries to find every corner I can cut? So who exactly are we? And so today we're coming together and we're trying to collectively say, as we celebrate the solemnity of all saints, a day in which we give thanks to God for the witness of these men and women who have gone before us in faith, and those that we ask for our prayers. And maybe it's good to look at, so who are these saints? It's hard to put into words exactly what a saint is. And if we look at all the various men and women who have been formally canonized by the Church over the centuries, it becomes very clear to us that no two saints are exactly alike. Their backgrounds are different, their genders, their races, their ethnicities, their economic situations, they're all different. Their personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, they were different. Put simply, their lives were different, not just from ours, but they were different from the other saints as well, too. So who exactly are the saints? Some may argue that the goal of every human person is to discover who they really are. And it can be argued that it can take a lifetime to do so. So that in discovering our true selves is a lifelong endeavor, something that we may never complete. And that may very well be true. And so maybe the saints had to struggle with the same questions that we wrestle with. After all, they're just men and women just like you and I. And yet, one thing that every saint seems to have in common, one thing that they seem to all embrace, is the understanding that their true self, their authentic self, could not be separated from the person that God was calling them to be. So, no matter, even if they haven't figured out, those two people still had to be identical. So they didn't have just a secular life and then a religious life. They didn't have one way of acting in the real world and one way of acting in a religious setting. They didn't settle for some lukewarm version of themselves. In other words, they didn't consider a good life, a giving life, a loving life, a holy life to be some sort of unrealistic, lofty ideal that wasn't worth striving for because it was unattainable. But rather, like Matthew Kelly often reminds us, is the saints simply tried to be the best version of themselves, despite their limitations and weaknesses and even their sin. Simply tried to be the best person that Christ created them to be, called them to be, and died for them to be. In other words, their best self, their most authentic self, had nothing to do with what they wanted or what they expected to gain from the world. All that mattered was what God mattered, what God wanted for them first, and by extension for the world. And so the church holds up these men and women for us as a way of showing us that all the different ways of our lives can all be pleasing to God. All are different examples of what faithfulness can look like. And yet what jumps out in each case is a willingness on the part of these men and women to put on Christ in their particular time and place, in their particular circumstances, with their particular gifts and struggles. They didn't have to be everything to everyone. They didn't have to become different people in different situations. They didn't have to act one way in public and one way in private. Rather, they could just simply be themselves, their true selves, simply the beautiful people God created them to be. And they were humble enough to be poor in spirit. They would be empathetic enough to mourn. They were vulnerable enough to be meek. They were courageous enough to thirst for righteousness. They were understanding enough to be merciful. They were contrite enough to be pure of heart. And that's a blueprint for being a saint. It's not that every saint was able to embrace all these qualities in their fullest sense. After all, they were sinners too, just like you and I. But that didn't stop them from trying their very best. And as a result, in their own way, they changed the world. And maybe we should do the same. All holy men and women of God,